In this tutorial, I'm actually going to be showing you how to make engine shift sounds using RPC variables in Xact. In order to do this, you're going to need an engine loop, which I've included in this project. Now, as you can see, I have Xact open right now with basically the default project with a few minor adjustments I've made. And the first thing I'm actually going to do is I've got the gameplay SFX wavebank open right now. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to insert wave file. And well, it's already preset for the SFX folder, but if it wasn't, just click on the SFX folder and go to SFX Viper GTS engine loop.wave. And here you see it's actually in the project. Now the gameplay SFX wavebank, I actually have default to set for SFX compression. However, if you notice, the actual compression is XWMA. This does not work well with looping sounds. XWMA actually cuts off a small bit at the end, so loops do not flawlessly loop. So I'm actually going to click directly on the engine loop, and I'm going to go down to compression preset for this loop specifically, and I'm going to change it to looping SFX compression. Now you can see it's in 80 PCM, which means it'll loop fine. Next, I'm actually going to go to the sound banks, open up gameplay, and I'm going to open this up a bit here, and I'm actually going to drag the engine loop over here. So now we have the SFX Viper GTS engine loop sound name. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to do that 3 more times. And then I'm going to rename the original to add a 1. So here you see there's 4 versions of the same loop, engine loop 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each one of these is going to actually represent our actual pitch shifts. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to take them down to the queue name. There we go. Now what I'm actually going to do next is I'm going to go over to the queue instance under the variables tab. If that's not open, you can just open up variables. Queue instance, I'm going to right click and I'm going to new queue instance variable. And what I'm going to name this Viper GTS speed. And I'm going to put the max at about 200 and let's say 40. And basically what this max is going to be the maximum possible speed that the car will actually be able to go. So I'm going to close out of that. Now that that's made, I'm going to go down on the actual tree. You see here on the RPC presets, I'm going to right click and make a new RPC preset. So here we have the actual RPC preset window. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually click on this here for the variables. And I'm going to scroll down to Viper GTS speed. And for the object, I'm going to choose sound. And for the parameter, I'm going to choose pitch. And now I'm actually going to close out of that. I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename this Viper GTS Shift 1. And you'll notice that I'm actually naming everything by the actual car name. And this is actually important because later on when you start having multiple cars, it becomes very, very important to have organization. So I'm going to go to RPC presets again and do the same thing I just did. Okay, so now that that's done, the next thing we're actually going to need to know is the actual car shift speeds. Now, I've actually went into Notepad and just created basically a little bit of these are imaginary numbers. These aren't the actual Viper's speed. I've actually given it the automatic gear shift miles per hour. So I've given that 60. And then the max speed of shift 1 is 110 and so on. And then shift 4 only has max speed 190. So what I'm actually going to use these in is I'm going to open up these individual shifts starting with Viper GTS shift 1. And I'm going to take this here, I'm going to slide it all the way to the left, and then I'm going to lower it about -8. And what that basically means is when the car is first starting, it's going to be at -8 pitch of the original pitch. And then this number here would actually be the max speed. So shift 1 will be 110. And for the pitch, I'm just going to say 12 all the way up. Now, what you're also going to need to do is set the automatic gear shift spot at about 70. So click here, 70. And for this, going to drag it down to about the 0 crossing line. There we go. And for both of these on the curvature, I'm going to change it from linear to slow. Now I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to go to Shift 2. Same thing, 0, -8. Next we have a max speed of 140 and a pitch of, I'm going to say, about 8. And for this you're going to need the actual automatic gear shift of Shift 2 and the actual automatic gear shift of Shift 1. So 70 and 110. Change these to slow, somewhere in that area, and about right there. I'll change this to 70. Okay. So you basically get the idea from Shift 1 and Shift 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Categories, and I'm going to right click on Default, and I'm going to make new subcategory. And I'm going to call this Viper GTS Loop. Now that I've made that category, I'm going to go over to the Gameplay Sound Bank, and I'm going to click on these, and I'm actually going to go to Category and Viper GTS Loop. And I'm going to put all of them in Viper GTS Loop. Now, inside the Viper GTS Loop, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to limit the instances down here. So I'm going to limit it to 1, and then at the behavior at max, I'm going to tell it to replace. And then replace instance, I'm going to say oldest, and then the crossfade type, I'm going to say equal power. And for the fade in, I'm going to put 0, and for the fade in, I'm going to put 0.5. What that's actually going to do is it's going to create a sound when the actual shift happens. So it doesn't have just a gap. It actually has sort of a little dissonance. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to assign the actual sound effects to the RPC presets. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to right click on Viper GTS Shift 1, or you can hit F4, and you can attach sounds. And I'm going to attach the engine loop 1 to Shift 1. Do the same with each shift. So now that that's done, each one of these sound effects corresponds with the actual RPC preset defined for it. So if you actually click on Viper GTS Speed, and you go down here to the corner, you can actually see that all of these are actually loaded into the speed queue, and you actually have the ability to audition them while they're playing. So what I'm actually going to do next is I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to click Open, and I'm actually going to open one that I've already set up earlier. Here we are. We have all of our actual sound effects. Now I'm actually going to be moving these gradually up with the speed. So I'll increase the value slowly, and then you're going to notice that it's actually going to start going up, and then I'm going to be shifting from each loop as it hits its actual automatic gear shift points. So here we go. And there you have it. That would be all the gears shifting in as they would in-game. So I hope this tutorial helps, and obviously you can see the importance of actual good naming convention in this tutorial. Be sure to check out my page in the future for more tutorials. Thank you.